to the IRC's video on financing your education. Today, we're going to talk about the different costs relate in ways to pay for your higher education. This is part of a video series that IRC has developed to help you manage your finances. In the session today, we're going to learn about the costs of higher education. We're going to learn about paying for higher education through federal and state student aid, school aid, scholarships from other sources, and loan products. We'll go through all these different terms as well to help you get a full picture of what aid might be out there to help you pay for your education. In this training, we'll also talk about making a plan for financing your education. So whether you're thinking about attending higher education yourself, or if you're thinking about it for your children or other family members, hopefully this training gives you a better idea of what costs might come and how to plan for that future goal. Now let's talk about the costs of higher education. When we talk about higher education pathways, we're referencing two main pathways. First, we're thinking of college and the university path, or the vocational certification and training pathway. For college and university, these are generally 2 to 4 year degrees. You might hear undergraduate or graduate degrees, associate's degrees, bachelor's. These are all things that would fall under this college and university pathway. Generally, when thinking about the cost of attendance for this path, you're usually paying either by semester, such as fall, spring, or summer semester, or if you are attending school part-time, you may pay by credit. Each class has a different credit value, and your school sets an amount that students will have to pay per credit. So it's just some things to think about when you're thinking about that path. Now, talking about the vocational certification and training pathway, these are generally programs that are less than 2 years and are industry recognized certifications to help you find a job in your field. These can include things like certified nurse assistant, roles in roles in allied health, such as medical assistant, electronic health records certifications. Can also include positions such as in the culinary industry or working in trades such as plumbing, electrician, construction-related positions. These courses you generally pay by the course, you pay by the class, and often if you're looking at starting a career in one of these industries, are a good first step into getting a good job in the field. For more information on these education pathways, you can go to an event that Settle In recently held, describing these in more detail. During this training, we're mainly going to talk about the costs of attending higher education, but if you have questions, we'll post this link in the comment section of the video for you to check out later. So before you jump in to higher education, it's worth noting that education is an investment. It's an investment of your time, of your money, of your brain power, and you'll want to think of your goals and weigh your options before deciding on taking this investment. So just like any important decision in your life, you'll want to think through what you want out of your career, what you want in your future, and think about all of the different aspects of your education and why that's important to you. So if you need some guidance, it might be helpful to do some research, to talk to some career coaches or advisors, to speak to people that you trust in your life, speak to people at the schools and education institutions you're thinking of, or even professionals in your field to get more information before you make a decision. As we'll see in this training, there are many costs to education, so you want to take that into consideration. So the first cost to think about is actually applying. So now that you've thought about your goals, let's say you've decided you want to pursue higher education, there are some costs that come at the application stage. So you will have to apply to schools or apply to programs. And each of these have different requirements. So some costs to think about are degree evaluation. If you have a degree from a different country, and you would like to see if that would count in the US, or if you need to show that, you're going to need to get that evaluated. And there's a cost based on the company you work with to do this. Then there are entrance tests or standardized tests you might need to take in order to attend the school you're going to. So the first one you might have heard of is the SAT. The SAT, or the Scholastic Aptitude Test, is an entrance exam for folks entering college or university pathways. Generally, you'll hear high school students taking this exam in their 11th or 12th grade as they're looking to go to school. Another test that you might hear about is the ACT. ACT stands for American College Test, and similarly is an entrance exam for college. Many times, again, you'll hear this for high school students taking this to enter college or university. Another exam that you might have heard of is the TOEFL, or the Test of English as a Foreign Language. If you attended school in another country, or if English is not your first language, some schools might require you to take the TOEFL to assess your English language comprehension and see if you are at the proficiency level to attend school. Some other things to think about are application fees. So when you apply to schools, there might be some fees to complete their applications. And then lastly, there may be some prerequisite classes. So for example, if you're looking at a vocational certification, they might ask you to take an entrance exam to assess your English language or your math skill level. If you don't place high enough for what they think is required to attend that school or attend that course, then they're going to recommend you take English classes. They oftentimes will offer you to take English classes at their school or at community college, and these do cost money. So if you're unsure about your English level or are unsure if they offer you these classes, there are ways for you to improve your English language skills before having to pay for these courses. There are many free English language class options in your city and your state that might be a better option so you don't have to pay for these other courses. As far as the cost of education, there are several costs related to your actual education. So let's say you finished your application, you've been accepted to school, congratulations, or accepted to your course. These are a few of the common costs of attending higher education. First is tuition. Tuition is the actual cost for instruction. This is the amount they charge you for taking classes. So tuition can either be charged by semester. Generally, you will pay a flat fee if you are enrolled for full-time or above a certain amount of classes. And that way, if you decide to take, and it differs by school, but many times if you take 4 or more classes, you pay one amount for the whole semester, or you can also pay by credit. Tuition is calculated by semester. So like we mentioned earlier, you would pay one cost for the spring, one cost for the fall, one cost for the summer, whichever way it's organized at your school. Another thing to think about related to tuition is that tuition is going to be different at each school. Some schools offer better rates for people that live in the state. So for example, if you live in Virginia and you're going to a school in New Jersey, then you might get charged a higher tuition rate because you're originally not from that state. So you'll want to look at both of those options, in-state and out-of-state tuition. Another cost of education is room and board. So if you or your children are going to school far away and you're going to need a place to stay, schools often offer the option of rooming at the school. And room and board includes the cost to live there in a dormitory or a suite that they offer, and also includes sometimes food costs like meal plans, where they give you money on a card to buy food from cafeterias or other food places at your school. The other thing to think about are these school administrative fees. So these are an additional cost, and they generally pay for things like student activities, using library fees, printing. School admin fees are not included in tuition, and so you'll want to make sure you check out what that fee is because it will be an additional add-on to your education bill. And then lastly, when we think of education costs, we think of books and supplies. So these are also not included in these other costs. Likely for your classes, when you start your classes or when you register, they're going to give you a list of books that you'll need to purchase. So you'll have to budget for that separately. Additionally, your class might ask for other items. Maybe you need scrubs because you're attending a health-related course, or you might need supplies for a lab that you're taking. So you will need to make sure that you budget and leave some budget for these other supplies that might be needed for school. Now, when we think of costs of education, it's also important to think about your individual situation. Not all of us can afford to go to school full time. Not all of us are able to room and board. We may have families, we may have other obligations. So you'll want to think about not just the cost of attending school, but how are you going to support yourself and how are you going to live outside of just that education component? So things to think about. You're likely going to need a laptop or computer for school, so you'll need to budget for that. Think about how are you going to pay for your housing, whether it's your rent or your mortgage. You'll still need to have a place to live while you're in school. Other things is transportation. If your school is not close, not within walking distance, you'll need to figure out if you're taking public transportation or if you'll need to budget for car costs. Often schools don't offer free parking. You'll need to pay for parking. Usually they have student parking passes that you'll need to apply for. Also, internet will be important for school. You can get away with going to the library with free internet access. However, there may be times where you're going to need to do assignments in your home. Additionally, childcare, uniforms, and other certification or testing costs might be things that you'll need to complete school. So when we look at all these costs, it's important to think about your budget and to think about what your goals are, and then budget for the pathway you'd like to take. So let's look at this chart. So like we mentioned earlier, there are differences in cost per school. You'll want to research, you'll want to shop around and go to different schools and universities to get a better idea of what programs they offer and what the costs are. So for example, we see here, generally public colleges or universities are lower cost. So see here it has books are $12.98, living expenses might be $15,000, in-state tuition is $9,000, and then we see that out-of-state tuition, which can be up to $23,000 or $24,000. Now let's look at a private college or university. Here we're seeing the books are about the same, living expenses not too different, but we see the big difference in that tuition cost, much higher than the public college or university. And then lastly, looking at two-year community colleges, again, the books and living expenses are similar to the other two, a little bit different, a little bit lower, while tuition is much lower. So again, this is why you want to do your research and understand what your goal is in going to higher education, And that way you can make a better plan and budget effectively for it. Something to be aware of is there are private for-profit colleges that you should be wary of. These are schools that are businesses. They are there to make money and they operate that way. They have been known to have fake marketing or false marketing. They often charge more. They often push more loans and unsubsidized loan products on their students. And the graduation rate is not as high as these other more accredited education institutions. So you might see places like University of Phoenix or some of these others that have been known to, promise a lot of things, but might result in a bigger cost price tag at the end. And sometimes these degrees are not recognized by the industry. So that regardless, you always want to do more research. You always want to talk to somebody at the universities, talk to professionals in the field before making a decision.